Alright, we are recording for the 25th anniversary introduction of Princess Bride. It's interesting. It gives more information than the 30th anniversary, but I like the writing style of the 30th anniversary introduction better. As I said in that video, that one felt like it was written as a story to be read, to be told to somebody. This it feels a little bit more clinical, but it still is. He's telling a story. It doesn't have the flow like you would read it to somebody. It's more reading, and then you get to a moment where it's like, okay, now it's flowing like a story you would read. It does also continue with the whole. It's the Morgenstern. Get the right Morgenstern. Sorry, I was dropping that second R. So like he talks about how it makes it hard to tell how much of this is true, how much of it isn't. Okay. So it says that one thing that he did, and he later regretted doing this, but undid. I could believe that this much is true. That he initially was approached by Fox for the movie, and that there was the green light guy. That every studio has one. He explains the green light guy, or GG, is the most powerful person in any studio, because that's who decides, okay, we're going to release the money for this movie to be made. No one else at the company makes that decision. So like even a CEO would not do that. Yeah, but a CEO can still pressure somebody, because it can be like, do it or you're fired. And other things like that. So I mean, but it still is, yes. The person that would make the decision of what movies you make and don't make would be the most important person. Anyway. Says that at Fox, the guy there loved the idea. And the arrangement that loved the idea of making the book into a movie. And they came to an arrangement where Fox bought the rights to the book, but did not buy the rights to the screenplay. So Goldman still held that. So the idea being then that if they want the screenplay from him, they'll have to go to him. He later realized, especially after this Greenlight guy was canned, and the way he describes it was like, yeah, the next day is when we were going to like start production, so things would have been rolling that would not be stopped then. But no, he got fired, and whenever that happens, the successor never wants to do anything from the prior person, because then it's their movie, not yours. So that kind of Andy, completely believe it. Anyhow, but he then realized, oh, they own the book. That means they can hire anyone to write the screenplay. This wasn't a good plan. There's that, but there's also, so he wants to write the screenplay. He's trying to do that, and he says that basically, right after the meeting where they come to this agreement, all that paper signed, he becomes incredibly ill, and is then put in the hospital. And no one can quite tell what it is, but then it occurs to him, I'm 10 years old again. It's just like when my father read the Morgenstern, that's how it tends to be referred to as. Yeah, the Morgenstern. He had pneumonia when his father first read to him, and now because he needs to basically recreate it, needs to get back in touch with that story, that now the pneumonia has returned. And when he curses, he calls for the nurse, and the night nurse came in, and I told her to read me the Morgenstern. The what, Mr. Goldman? She said. Start with the Zoo of Death, I told her. Then I said, no, forget that. Start with the Cliffs of Insanity. Oh, right, that's exactly where I'll start, but I left my Morgenstern at the desk. I'll just go get it. It's like, and then it becomes Helen, his wife, which I also was looking something, because I wanted to see how true some of this was, and saw some other stuff that is important. I'll get to that though. But Helen, his wife, and several others came, and basically they start just reading the different roles. So like Helen plays Buttercup, and it's kind of funny. Now, what is it you want me to read? It says something. I don't want you to read anything, Helen. You never liked the book. You don't want to read to me. You're just humoring me, and besides that, there's no part for you. I could be Buttercup. Oh, come on, she's 21. They get divorced. It does say that later. But, yeah, and it's it is kind of a funny, silly story there, but that gets him through it. But also the whole that gets him through the pneumonia. But it's also like, you know, get some energy so he can work on it, work on the screenplay. But it doesn't come to fruition. Then it's like 10 more years before finally he gets connected with Rob Reiner and Norman Lear. Norman Lear putting up the money. So yeah, the thing that I was looking up, because I wanted to look up the Princess Bride novel on Wikipedia, because normally there's something about its reception, and I just wanted to see certain things there to see how accurate some, because I try and remember what all it said there, because he talks a lot about the movie making in this introduction. But I want to see some stuff there. I didn't see it, but I did see that there's a point his wife's name is not Helen, and there's also reference in the introductions, but also in the book, because it's a frame narrative there as well, that he is a son. It's like, no, they had 2 daughters. They do still get divorced, sadly. But it does say in here that, of course, along with the good, I have regrets. I'm sorry about the legal troubles with the Morgenstern estate, about which more later, but that's part of just the frame narrative. The framed... Dude, this guy did Inception, okay? That's essentially the level of framing that he has here. That just, yeah. Yeah, about which more later. I'm sorry, Helen and I went not that we both didn't know it was coming, but did she have to leave me the very day the movie opened in New York? That is dumb, actually, when you think about it. Yeah, and I'm sorry the Cliffs of Insanity have now become the biggest tourist attraction in Florida, making life hell for the Forest Rangers. I mean, it's just... He's really committed to the bit here. But a lot of what he's talking about, and this I definitely do believe, a lot of the focus when it finally is like the movie's getting made is he's talking about Andre the Giant and how wonderful a person he was, how wonderful it was to work with him. It also reminds me, I can't remember who it was. Andre the Giant is one of those people, and there are many people like this, where just the way their lives went, they end up having connections with people you wouldn't normally expect. I can't remember who it was. I wish I could. But where he was growing up, because him being a giant, that started when he was of a young age as well. It was difficult for him to go to school because he couldn't get on the bus. He couldn't fit on the bus. But there was like a man down the street who had a large van and would take him to school every day. I cannot remember who it was. But it's one of those things that's actually really... It's somebody like of significance. Oh man, I gotta... Let me see if I can find it here. Because I still have the Wikipedia page open. I might be able to get over to him. Life, maybe? I'm not seeing it here. Oh, wait. No. Oh, wait, no. Okay. Okay, no. I'm misremembering it. It's that multiple people apparently would take turns driving the kids to school. So it's not like there was a formal bus, was adults that would do this. And one of them was Samuel Beckett. They'd drive the local children to school, including him and his siblings. Okay. Yeah, but it still is like Samuel Beckett, the Irish playwright. So yeah, it's kind of fun. But I thought that I had also heard that part of the story was this is also like the only person who could drive him, because it was only this person that had a large enough car, because he was big, even as a child. He was big. Anyhow, so it talks about how there were concerns with Andre because he was a wrestler. He was constantly on tour for that. So would they be able to get him? But when they asked him, he did agree. He would try to do it. But there was also the issue that, I mean, you can, when you watch the movie, personally, the accent never really was a problem to me. Like, I never have a problem understanding him, except for the whole, the way he says indigo. I always thought he was saying indigo. I mean, to be fair, it's only like he's like the only one who ever says his name, except for hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. But he's Mandy Patinkin is saying with an accent, so it just anyhow. What Rob Reiner ended up doing was he read every line for Andre the Giant, for Fezzik, into a tape recording, then gave the tape. This is what it's claiming here, and I can believe that this is true. I can believe. Gave the tape to Andre so that while he was still wrestling, and they were still doing pre-production stuff, he could listen to it and hear the intonation. So, at that point, I would believe he would be competent enough with English, but potentially not competent enough for being in a movie yet. So this would have been a way for him to start learning the lines phonetically. But then when it came time for the first table read, well, technically the first two, he was basically just repeating the tapes, including at the same pace as the tapes, which is a problem because those tapes were recorded without someone opposite. So Mandy Patinkin, being Inigo, somebody that he has a lot of the conversations with. So you wouldn't have on the tape then the energy of the other actors, so you wouldn't be able to reflect that back. Like if they're talking really fast, you might also then start talking really fast. Things like that. So it describes here. Andre was giving one of his slow memorized readings. Mandy as Inigo tried to get Fezzik to go faster. Andre gave back another of his slow, rote responses. They went back and tried it again and again. Mandy as Inigo asked Andre as Fezzik to go faster. And Andre came back at the same speed as before. Which was when Mandy said, "Faster, Fezzik!" And with no warning, he slapped the giant hard in the face. By the way, further context here is they had just been to lunch. So they did a reading before lunch, did a reading after. They could have sat inside, but it was a beautiful day, and inside was a table with a bench that would fit him. But Andre said, no, we'll sit outside. So he took the metal chair that he would not only fit, he pulled the arms out so he could sit down, and then the metal had sprung back. So you've already seen this guy, who's a professional wrestler, greatest wrestler in the world, bend metal, and you're just going to slap him in the face. I can still see Andre's eyes go wide. I don't think he had been slapped outside the ring since he was a little boy. He looked at Mandy, and there was a brief pause. A very dead silence filled the room. And then Andre started speaking faster. He just rose to the occasion, gave it more pace and energy. You'd almost see his mind. Oh, this is how you do it outside the ring. Let's try it for a while. In truth, that slap was the beginning of the happiest period of his life. I can absolutely believe that is what happened. Because it's that kind of performance, that kind of acting is likely something he had no experience with. I mean, even if somebody wants to say that wrestling is all fake and that's all performative anyway, fine. Don't need that argument. That's not acting like in a movie. But in some ways though, the idea of trying to reflect the energy though would be present in both, but that's a physical energy. Like if he has an opponent who's starting to really move around some and has more energy, he would start reflecting that back to keep up the pace. But delivering lines is a different action, but it would be the same idea. So yeah, I can definitely believe that, and it's just funny to think slapping Andre the Giant. I mean, it's also, I would feel bad because he was such a kind man, but hey, sometimes it's what you gotta do. I mean, to be fair, you do that because it provokes shock, and he probably was like, he probably stopped and started thinking. And even if it could have been a still negative response for him. That's like, I am upset that he did this, I'm doing my best, but then it may have been, wait, he did this because he's upset with me. I'm doing something wrong. I should stop doing what I've been doing. Let me try it this way. Okay, now I'm getting it. And legitimately, he was Fezzik. He did that role so perfectly. It's wonderful. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There is one mention that I do kind of want to... There's one thing mentioned in the introduction. I want to see how long it's going. They do kind of want to mention. Oh, yeah, I'll also mention that because I'm not sure how much I believe. he referred to when the movie came out, it didn't do well. That is mediocre in the theaters. It wasn't until it hit video cassette that's no, I'm not even going to bother trying to explain to people. Video cassette. Um, wasn't until then that you really saw its popularity. He did also talk about word of mouth, but it was really then. And it's like, yeah, actually that makes sense. As somebody who grew up with video cassettes that would have watched this on video cassette, and then later DVD, and now I have it on Blu-ray. In fact, my version of it even has a 4K. I just don't have a 4K player. Anyway, I can absolutely believe that, because there were times, I mean, I've shared this story before with a different movie, but there were times where, yeah, put a movie in, watch it, rewound it, watched it again. That's part of what it was like growing up for me, and it does disappoint me that a lot of people, I mean, yeah, sure, you can drop the rewinding, you don't need to do that with DVDs, but it kind of disappoints me that there might be people growing up today, or already have grown up, that didn't experience that, didn't have a movie that they would just put in and just keep watching it, which I can believe with physical media, DVD, Blu-ray, that's easy. But I can also believe that isn't what you'd be doing when it's streaming. And now, to be honest, I don't know. I don't have kids right now, and I also know I would try to not have them just watching streaming stuff. But I've talked about it before. I do have this concern that with streaming, it's potentially reducing the medium from entertainment, well, from artistic entertainment to just entertainment to be consumed. I guess is a concern where you wouldn't just repeat the same thing over and over again, because like, oh, you've watched this, now you wanted to watch this, so you're already pulling away. But absolutely, Princess Bride, I could see that being not necessarily a Saturday, but like some day in the summer when you're not at school, or when you are sick, that you put that in, you watch it, and then you rewind it, watch it again, you watch again, you watch again. I could see plenty of kids, they would in a single day watch it like 3 times because they love the movie. And it's just easy. I don't know why it is, but it's just an easier thing to do when you're a kid. I don't think I could watch any movie today, and I don't mean any like movie of today, I mean any movie now that I'm an adult, multiple times like that. Not on my own. I mean, maybe if I did have a kid and they wanted to watch it, I might be able to stay there and watch with them, but then I'm enjoying it through them. In that case, it wouldn't just be for myself. Yeah, I do kind of wonder why that is. If it's, yeah, maybe that the magic, that there can be a certain magic with childhood, attaching yourself to a movie, putting yourself in there, connecting with them, like being in the movie, essentially having that sense of it, even though you're not affecting it, but still you feel so connected to it that then, yes, you want to watch it again because you're still in that magic and you're trying to keep that there. Whereas as an adult, maybe you don't really sense that anymore. I could believe that. And The Princess Bride would be an excellent example of a movie that has a magic that can draw you in. Because so many of the characters are so masterfully done. The pacing is also very good. I mean, as I said, it is a tremendously solid film, and it is also a very good film. I do think that there are some films that are better, some movies that are better, but there can be movies that are better. Like, these are great movies, but might not be quite as solid. Like, you might still have some things that are off with them, but it's still, it's a movie that, I mean, even he says it. Hang on. Where is it? Yeah, but the movie is the reason we're back together, because remember, this is the 25th anniversary introduction. I doubt that my publishers would have sprung for this edition if the movie hadn't happened. If you're reading this, dollars to donuts, you've seen the movie. It was a mild success when it first hit theaters, but word of mouth caught up with it when the video cassette came out. It was a big hit in video stores, then still is. If you have kids, you've probably watched it with them. And then there's a little bit more getting into more specifics that don't specifically matter here, but yeah. that is, people know the movie because that's what connected. It had that magic. And the one funny thing is, there's other movies that are also like that. I think, because I'm just looking down, and I can see The Last Starfighter, but I think that's also one where it didn't necessarily do that great in theater, but it did great when it came to video cassette, and you could have it at home. So it's, kid lies down, just propped up like this, staring at the television, it playing. Um, yeah, I'm now just thinking about it. It is an interesting dynamic to consider there, especially because I mean, you used to have kids that, yeah, well, it used to be with kids that they'd go like on the weekends to the movie theater to watch whatever the double feature was. I mean, it's like, yes, Leave It to Beaver is somewhat fictitious, but it is something like that is accurate. But you would also have serials there where it was a story that was continuing every week. Whereas then, following generations, when you have video cassette, VHS, you could, or beta, you could just watch the same thing over and over again without having to leave the house. Is interesting, but it is all I got a little distracted there. But the point I did want to make is it is kind of sad that Hollywood so focused on theater success that basically if a movie didn't make at least its budget back, that if it did not become profitable, not even just total at theater, but within like the first so many weeks at theater, it was considered a failure. But then you could have that movie making multiples of its budget on video cassette, and you know what? It would still be considered a failure. It is weird how some of that works. And yes, there are plenty of movies that they should still go to theater, but it's kind of sad that back then, and I think even now, they don't measure that kind of tale as whether or not something is a success. So you end up. I'm trying to think what would be an example. Something like that, where basically a game, something would get a sequel only because, and I can think of one game where that's kind of the case. Cult classics essentially, where it got a sequel not because the first earned it because it was profitable within the time window. No, but because there became a dedicated fan base that recognized it was very good. It just didn't necessarily connect with everyone at the time it needed to. Mirror's Edge would be an example of game like that. That was a cult classic. Oh crap, a movie did enter my mind, just can't think of what it was. In a way, Star Trek was like that. Because there was, what, decade and a half or so between the original series television show and then the movies. And it was 3 decades or so before you got to the next generation. And it was because once it had reruns, people loved, that's why it really took off and had such an impact on the world even. Yeah, now they have movies that do so poorly they have to fudge numbers where it's like, oh, but it did great on streaming. Well, how many times was it actually watched on streaming? Oh, it was watched this many times. How many times was it that the movie was watched to completion? We're not talking about that. I mean, it's... Yeah. Hollywood's not in great shape. But on the bright side, concerning that, if it collapses, the talent doesn't go away, just some of the larger names, and also the larger institutions that are probably causing the demise. The real thing that would be dangerous from Hollywood collapsing is what will happen to the IP. Will that end up going... Because, like, if you have a company... I don't even remember who actually produced The Princess Bride. Hang on, let me see if I can quickly find that. Okay, it is 20th Century Fox, which now owned by Disney. So if that were... Well, Disney already has that idea of the vault, which I dislike. But you could, like, what if somebody were to buy, if Disney were to collapse, go bankrupt, and so the IP had to be sold off to settle debts and stuff like that, or just if they sold off, what if it went to somebody who decided, yeah, I'm just going to lock this away, and not allow anything more to be done with it, anything new to be done with it. That would be a shame. That is the one thing that I would be most concerned with it shuttering, with Hollywood shutting down. I mean, things disappearing because whoever would buy them wouldn't necessarily care. I mean, as it is, I think some of the companies today, they don't care, but I'm definitely going off topic. Although, in a way, it does kind of relate to what he was saying here, that, with the rights to the book being sold, it's like, in theory, you could have a studio, and I think there might be examples where this happened, where a studio would buy the rights to a story to intentionally never produce it. Or they would just buy it, and then it ends up languishing there for like decades even, because they own it, but they don't want to do it. The people that felt that it would be a good idea to do it have left the company for whatever reason. Things like that. There's a movie, Sullivan's Travels. Yeah, I do have it right there. I couldn't remember if it's there or if it was somewhere else. Where they talk about, I'd want to do "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Which is, it's not necessarily what the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" movie that came out, I don't remember when it was, but it still was the idea of, it's this great story, but no one, like, there's no one who has enough skill to actually pull it off, but it still is, a studio owns it, so it's just not being made because they don't feel that there's anyone that is capable of doing it. So you would have had things like that. It's, and in theory that almost would have happened here, except that it was the dude Goldman bought the rights back, and then although it is funny, ended up going back to 20th Century Fox anyhow, but at least he's claiming this Norman and Lear put up the money, but also Rob Reiner, who he had met Carl Reiner, Rob's father, and given him a copy of the book, which Carl then gave to his son Rob, so he knew the book and loved the book. Things worked out nicely that way. So now you actually had the people that wanted to do it. But that was a decade or so after the first attempt that failed. So next up will be Chapter 1, which I actually do want to quickly look at something. I want to see just how long these chapters can be, because it's also going to be odd to read it. Okay. Okay, no, that's because, yeah, there is, apparently it is written, are you serious? Wow, you're almost 30 pages in before you get to The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern, classic tale of true love and high adventure. And it takes that long to finally get to reading it. And okay, at 32 is when it actually oh man, I have to change up thumbnails now. That's when you actually get to Chapter 1, The Bride. But yeah, apparently one thing that I saw is it is mixed in his framing narrative and the story, so it's maybe an interesting read. But that, and does make me wonder how long some of these chapters are, because you end up with that. Okay, based on those, I'm guessing, oh no, some of these are actually really, really fast. Anyway, I'm gonna have to change up thumbnails. Hate having to do that. It's just a pain. Alright. See you next time.